This episode of Bartholomew Town is brought to you by the University of Rhode Island Online, Newport Film, Navigant Credit Union, Half Street Group, and Health Source RI for employers.
Bartholomew Town.
Well, there's certainly been plenty of educational conversation here in Rhode Island, and that is not only in the sense of things that educate you, but the general industrial conversation around education for good reason. And look, it's important, I think, sometimes to take a step back and look at this from a variety of different perspectives. At the end of the day, there's only really one way to assess education in my mind, and that is through the eyes of and through the results that children who are being educated receive. Our guest today has really framed that quite well through a variety of medium, including books, films, and a nonprofit. Ted, I guess the best thing to do is if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name's Ted Dintersmith, here in Rhode Island, in Jamestown, Rhode Island. And I'm someone who had a business background, technology innovation, that got incredibly interested in this question: what is the purpose of school? And naively, when my kids were working their way through the system, I thought the purpose of school was to prepare kids for life. And the reality in America today is the purpose of school is to train kids for standardized tests that are scored by computers, tied to tasks that computers can do. And that struck me as an interesting thing to dive into.
Absolutely. You know, we had a conversation on this podcast. It was earlier this month, and with the coordinators of the University of Rhode Island's honors colloquium, which this year is exploring really this exact question of what in the world is, what should education be? And our conversation spent a lot of time on standardized tests, things like that, even some of the traditional reading, writing, arithmetic-oriented problem solving. That may not only be outdated, but it may be taking kids in the wrong direction in some ways, just in terms of the skill sets and the critical thinking that is going to be required for where we're heading as a society. So when did you get into this work, and how did you begin the sort of, you know, the distillation of that question in your own mind?
Well, I'd say the starting point is understanding the path and the acceleration of technology-driven innovation. I had a pretty good understanding of the implications it has for what young adults need for career, citizenship, and happy lives. And it turns out that the keys are things like creativity and curiosity and audacity, which oddly enough are driven out of kids in an obsolete education model that says what we equate as learning outcome, learning progress, is a score on an exam that really you start to look at the practice questions and your mind explodes. And you know, half of the accountability is tied to math. I've got a book coming out later this year about that. And when you look at that sea of math esoterica we expose kids to and expect them to do well on, it's math that adults don't use that your phone does perfectly. And it's high stakes. You know, of kids that don't get a high school degree, 80% cite algebra. And I'd invite any of your readers to think about how often they're using absolute values or irrational numbers or piecewise linear functions in their daily life. The answer is people don't use this math. They used to before computers. It used to be a path to a bunch of professions before computers. It's now been automated. And it's when you start to say we're going to chase higher test scores and call that education progress or education lack of progress, instead of stepping back and saying, what should the goals be? You make colossal errors. And I think that's exactly what we've done across America and what we're doing in Rhode Island.
No doubt about it. And if you speak with educators, not only on the ground in terms of those who are working in schools today, but also those who are sort of in the exo-educational field, I think of whether that's youth sports, some of the arts programs. I was having a conversation with someone who leads one of the premier after-school arts programs in the state. And their conversation, it kind of reflected what you hear sometimes from college professors, which is that some of the fundamental skills aren't in place in a way that allow for a student to attack problems most effectively. And in the case of the arts programs, it's, hey, critical thinking, communication, group work, being able to make a quick pivot on something when you're presented with a challenge, whether that's the actual construction of a piece of art or it's trying to figure out how you're going to get to the actual facility if the bus is not running. These are the kinds of skills that are being fostered in a lot of environments, but they also seem to be delayed or not sufficient in our public education infrastructure.
Yeah, and it sort of brings me to I have a new film coming out that's premiering on September 18th with Newport Film. And I've spent this decade-long effort to try to find brilliant examples of education across America. Several years ago, I spent an entire school year, went to 200 schools, all 50 states, wrote a book about that. But when I visited this school in Virginia, I just was blown away because kids in high school spend a third of their time immersed in real learning. They have this innovation center, and the challenges range from traditional skills, firefighting, uh, welding, plumbing, electricians, to modern economy skills, digital media, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence. But these kids are diving in. They see meaningful, purposeful learning in front of them. That's what they're taking on every day. But building on your point, they work together. And it's this equalizer because we live in a world in the United States where you have the academically gifted kids that are sort of the top of the tier, and then the mainstream kids, and then the kids put on a bus and sent to some stigmatized vocational education center. Here, all kids work together. And the kid that might do really well on advanced math is side by side with the kid who's an amazing welder. And each realizes the other has complementary, interesting, skills and capabilities, but also it fuels local economic development. They intentionally prioritize the skills in their innovation center to meet what skills are in demand in the local economy. So half their kids don't feel they need more formal education. So they don't go to college. They go directly into career, having done internships and apprenticeships and time in the innovation center. So they hit the ground running, getting a starting job that pays them really well, knowing that's what they want to do. I think that's a great thing. But
Yeah.
because it's expected of all kids, the kids who are college bound aren't penalized for taking welding instead of AP chemistry. It's just kind of what we do here. And they enter college with more real world grounding, more clarity about what they want to major in, and an ability to make more money during the summer. So it's a win-win, yet you don't find that model essentially anywhere. You find it in bits and pieces, but I felt like, man, this is so well put together. This warrants telling this story. So we organized, put together a great documentary, fantastic film team. I think when you love the film, give all the credit to the director and his team, but it immerses you in the lives of these kids and their families and the local community. And you see just how uplifting school could be if we got out of the way of obsessing about test scores.
Yeah. What a basic but seemingly complex conversation that, I mean, we can look here in our own backyard. Rhode Island, there's always going to be the effort to compare us to Massachusetts. I don't know why we can't seem to shake that given the dramatically different complexion of the states, but and obviously size as well. But look, I mean, Rhode Island does, on a standardized test basis and on a practical basis, on an infrastructure basis, we do have some areas where we lag behind. At the same time, when you speak with kids one-on-one in certain environments, or you hear about or view some of the projects that they do, and you understand that, hey, look, their command of AI or their command of design programs or their critical thinking skills are being sharpened in spaces outside of school, and that's the platform that's going to get them to the next step, if you will, of their career path. You wonder why school leaders, inclusive of the Department of Education, don't say, hey, wait a minute, we need to listen to what's happening in these kids' lives and reflect that back into the classroom. A lot of times when you say, well, education has become about the adults in the room, people think that's union bashing. I wonder if it's just because people just simply aren't listening to what the kids need and what the kids want, and in some cases, what they're already doing to kind of prepare for their career and their lives as a whole.
Yeah, and it's what I love about your work, but it's the exception and unfortunately not the rule. Most media sources, when they talk about education quality, immediately go to reading and math scores. And they assume that better reading and math scores necessarily means better outcomes for kids. And it's actually, and that's, I get at this in my book, it's loosely correlated, not causal. And it's really important to say, am I preparing a kid for life if they've been able to go deep on multiple interesting careers, tie those career learnings to the academic theory, and leave high school with multiple interesting life choices? Or should we obsess about kids doing better on arc-secant questions when no adult uses that, or reading mind-numbingly boring reading passages and being trained to answer multiple choice questions about author bias? And what do we have to show for it, right? Most kids hate reading. Almost no high school kids on their own will read a book. Over 80% of adults hate math. None of them, even our cheerleader from Rote Math Learning, the National Center for Education Statistics, found, listen to this, 82% of US adults cannot compute the cost of a carpet given its length, width, and cost per square yard. And that's after thousands of hours on this explosion of low-level math esoterica that computers do perfectly and adults don't need. And I'll brag a little bit. I do know what I'm talking about when it comes to math. I have a PhD in applied math. I spent my
Bartholomew Town.
Are you ready to take the next step in your career? URI Online offers business and leadership-focused programs designed to fit your life. Whether your goal is to advance in your career in fields like public administration, supply chain management, or training and development, their online programs provide the flexibility you need with the high-quality education you deserve. Learn more from experienced faculty and collaborate with a network of professionals, all from the comfort of your home or wherever life takes you. Visit uri.edu/online to explore programs and start building your future today. URI Online. Learn anywhere with us. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,200 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our more than 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health and dental insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.
We're brought to you in part by Newport Film. Make sure you check out their indoor film screening series by visiting newportfilm.com. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communications, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience, message, and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com.
You're in math-based businesses. I'm not guessing about this. And I've given so many talks, and I put up this, I can put it in your show notes, this Where's Waldo? That's this chart of all the topics we cover in high school math. And I'll ask audiences, hundreds of people, can anyone here find something they use regularly and can explain? No. We lose, cotangent. It all just disappears within hours of the test. Right. And yet, that has been and continues to be the all-consuming goal of education. And when you read what comes out of things like RIDE, it's all about, we made up a little bit of ground against Massachusetts, or, blah, 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 blah. When I visited all 50 states and looked hard at their accountability, here's what came to mind. These are 50 covered wagons in an era where our kids need to be in Indianapolis race cars. And some covered wagons go faster and some go slower, but they all go way too slow. And if we got out of the way and let kids go deep on what they're interested in, leverage AI instead of ban it, and connect the learning to real world life options, these kids rise to that. That's what they're desperate for. Better for kids, better for families, better for the local community, better for a state. And what stands in our way? This conviction that test scores tell us everything we need to know, when actually, I believe test scores are the reason we're dealing with all sorts of challenges in our world today.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I offered this anecdote in a recent episode, the one I just cited, where we had the curators, coordinators of the URI Honors Colloquium on Education this year in. But I'll say it again because I think it's really relevant. A couple of months ago, I was asked to be a judge up at the Framingham Public School District in Massachusetts. And it was very interesting because there's an after-school program there where kids basically are put into groups. They're told, you're going to need to develop some kind of app over the next several months. And we recommend that it engages with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And we recommend that you use AI, and we recommend that you use a design platform, perhaps a platform like Figma or something like that. Go. You've got however many weeks. And these are kids of a wide diversity, just on a surface level, which is difficult to tell, but this is a widely diverse group of people. And it was extremely difficult for me to judge this event because every one of them was amazing. And I left there completely, number one, my spirit was rekindled. Number two, I realized I have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to AI, design, and all of these things. And these 15-year-old kids in Framingham can run laps around me. And three, kudos to Framingham Public Schools for putting that program in place where after school, these kids can come and do this work. You also saw how magnetic it was, and that's why they were in school. Who knows what their math scores were? Who knows what their English scores were? They were working in groups. They were using technologies of the future, and they're finding ways to create a business or entrepreneurial product that was actually sustainable and amazing.
Yeah. And it gets to a point, and I make this point and I feel bad making it, but given how fast AI is moving ahead, the jobs that will completely disappear in 3 to 5 years are the jobs most college grads used to roll into. Those jobs will be gone. And you either need to get out of its way with jobs like hands-on jobs, woodworking, master carpentry, electricians. Those are jobs that AI won't devour, or you need to get good at using it. But if you are right in its crosshairs, you can do everything right, and you will be home in the basement of your family, and everybody will be wondering why we did so many things right, yet have this to show for it. And I want to circle back because we last crossed paths I thought it was an incredible film, Middletown. And
yeah. Oh my goodness.
Newport film, huge fan.
Yeah.
That's dated. That was in the 1990s. But these kids, with a really bold rogue journalism teacher, took on a local community project, investigated a toxic waste dump, and brought it to life. It was transformational for the kids in the community. But then at the end, you saw how many of those kids pursued journalism or media as a career. And I find it interesting when I ask audiences, what experiences did you have during your school years that changed your life? It's almost never a normal course. It's almost always an after-school program, quite typically something related to journalism, or it's that adult in their school, not a parent, parents don't count, but that adult who got to know the kid and said quite specifically, I see this in you. It's a superpower. You're going to do great things. And my bet, if you looked at that set of kids in Framingham who did incredible work, maybe some did really well on AP courses, a bunch didn't.
That's
but
right.
Who's going to be a contributing citizen? Who's going to forge an interesting career? Who's going to have a happier, more purposeful life? It's the kids who do those projects and get that sense of satisfaction. And I think that's what people will see in the film Multiple Choice. They will see these kids supported by parents. And it's quite interesting, right? You'll have a kid with 2 college-educated parents who says, I'm not into academics. I want to be a master carpenter. And those parents courageously but appropriately say, good for you. You have another kid. This is amazing. A young girl who starts in high school thinking she wants to be a lawyer because she watched Law and Order on TV. gets some experience, says, "Are you kidding? No, no, no." Turns to nursing. She's now getting her nursing degree, but you interview the mother, and the mother says, not only am I amazed by what my daughter's doing, it inspired me. I'm now getting my GED degree so I can become a nurse practitioner.
Wow.
Boom. It's so uplifting and energizing. And it really is a model, I think, for what our schools need to be doing. And it urgently need to be doing in a state that's losing population, that has businesses wanting to leave, and honestly has, state leaders that I think just are trying to speed up a way too slow covered wagon instead of stepping back and saying what model makes sense in the 21st century.
Yeah, it's interesting. Governor McKee spends a lot of time and has had some success with his Attendance Matters campaign. But if you're attending something that isn't necessarily advancing your life in a meaningful way or a complete way, we'll say there's obviously meaning in school, but a fully complete way, you've got a lot more work to do on a sub-ROSA level to build that up. Ted, this is a great conversation. Multiple choice. It'll be at Newport Film on the 18th of this month. Tickets are $15. It's going to be at Salve Regina University. NewportFilm.com is where you can get the tickets and get all the details. That's a 7:00 screening. It's part of their indoor series, by the way. If you were wondering if they're still outdoors, you won't need to bring your snowboarding coat out there, sadly, and as we enter into the fall. But it'll be indoors. And Ted, thanks for your work and really appreciate you.
I'd had deep discounts for students and educators, and I'll be there. The superintendent from Virginia will be there. A student will be there. Thought leader Tony Wagner will be there, and the director. And for those listening, come up and say hi afterwards. I'm always excited to meet people who are buying into a forward look in terms of how schools can prepare kids for life.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,200 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our more than 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health and dental insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.